Right off the bat, I'll tell you, check the description. I'll put links to stuff I'm using. I'll put torque specs. I'll put all that. I'll cover that in the video as well. But if you have any questions, check the description. You can certainly post a comment, ask a question, but check the description first because hopefully I've already answered the question. Today I'm going to be doing a transmission service on this 2008 Honda Pilot. This procedure should be the same for all 2003 through 2008 Pilots, but like I said, this one's a 2008. This is a pretty basic service that the manual states is due every 30,000 miles. This Pilot has 102,000 miles on it, and I don't know the history. The owners bought it used not very long ago, and so we're doing a transmission service as preventative maintenance, and it is a simple drain and fill. Now, of course, I'm doing it on a lift, which makes things easier, but this can be done in a garage, in a driveway, just about anywhere. The only requirement is that you need to be able to lift the vehicle up a little bit to drain out the fluid, and then you need to have the vehicle level when it's time to check the fluid level at the end. So I've got just a couple basic tools here that I'm going to go over. First off, I've got a drain pan. I'm going to be using a different drain pan since I'm on a lift, but you'll need a drain pan. I've got a specific funnel that will reach down to the fill hole on the transmission. I've got a 3/8 torque wrench. I've got a 3/8 breaker bar. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a breaker bar, but you'll find, especially the fill plug, is going to be quite tight. And so this is just what I grabbed. And it's 3/8 because we need a 3/8 square drive to take out the drain plug on the transmission. I've got a 2-foot extension. You could piece together a couple shorter ones. I just happen to have this handy 2-foot one. And then I've got a 17 millimeter 3/8 socket. This is the socket we're going to need for the fill plug. And last on our list, we've got transmission fluid. Now, real quick, I'll cover transmission fluid. There's two important factors with transmission fluid. Well, one important factor, two factors. One is transmission fluid type. Honda used to call out Z1, I believe it was. Now I believe they've updated that to DW1. So all of the Hondas now are calling out for DW1 transmission fluid. So that's one thing, the type of transmission fluid. The second thing is the brand. And in this case, I've got Valvoline. The brand is much less critical. Now, I wouldn't hold it against you if you only wanted to run Honda fluid. That's a great choice. But that is a far second to the type. You cannot run a different type of transmission fluid in it. Interestingly, though, Honda actually says in the manual that you can temporarily run Mercon Dextron 3, I believe, but then when it's convenient to put the correct DW1 back in it, which is sort of interesting. So that means that, you know, you're not going to have a critical failure immediately if you did put the wrong type in, but the type does matter. So if you look on the back of this Valvoline stuff, it does say that it meets the Honda Acura DW1 spec. So this is the right fluid. Brand preference, that's another choice. That's a whole nother argument, but we've got the right type, and that is the critical thing. We've got 1 gallon because in this case, we're probably going to be using about 3.5 to 3 3/4 quarts. So 1 gallon will do it, 4 quarts, 1 gallon, however you purchase it is just fine. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to take our 17 millimeter socket on our 2-foot extension or whatever you got. We're going to sneak right in here over the air intake and right down onto the fill plug right there. I'll step back so you can see a good idea of where that is. That's where you're going to be looking, right down there. And then we're going to grab our breaker bar and we're going to crack that loose. It always takes a pretty good snap to get those free. Get a breaker bar on here. And there you go. That took a pretty good pull on this roughly 2-foot breaker bar to snap that fill plug loose. Then we can pull this out of here. And then we can reach down in here and loosen it by hand. We're going to loosen it just a little bit, then we're just going to leave it in there so that we don't get any dirt or debris in there. And now we're going to go underneath and we're going to crack open the drain plug and drain all the fluid out. Now we're going to sneak under here, just so you can see what angle we're coming from. We're going to go right under here, and here is our drain plug. Now, you can see there's a bunch of bolts all the way along here, but the drain plug is the one that's got the square drive 3/8 head on it. Now, the other thing, you want to make sure that there's not corrosion in there or any crud that's going to prevent you from seating this in all the way. You can see I got that seated all the way in there. Sometimes you need to take a pick and clean those out, but I think we're good on this one. This one's probably also going to take a fair amount of force, but not as much as the fill plug. More force pulling this back out. And then we should be able to just loosen this by hand. Now, one thing I didn't mention is gloves and shop towels or anything like that. So, you know, proceed with whatever you prefer. I'm not wearing any gloves or anything. We're just going to get this plug pulled out. Now, this is probably going to make a mess because it's probably going to shoot out and hit the engine subframe right here. So we're going to cautiously take this plug out and try not to make any bigger of a mess than we have to. All right, I see a little bit of dripping. We'll slowly pull it out here. We'll scoot the pan up. I might sacrifice a good shot here for the sake of not making a huge mess. Okay, and just as expected, we did hit the subframe a little bit, but not too bad. And this fluid looks a little dark, but not scary. So this is the right time to be doing it. I don't know the history on it, but this is a good service to be doing. The other two things to mention are that there is a crush washer on here. We'll inspect that. And then you can see there's some crud on the magnet, but really not a lot. So that's good. That's doing its job, and we're going to clean this up and get it ready to put back in. So I've grabbed a paper towel here, and we can kind of clean it up and see. A little bit of stuff on there, but there again, really nothing too terrible. So we've got everything cleaned up good, and this crush washer does not look to have any flaws or anything like that. You can replace it if you feel inclined. It's sort of hit and miss for me, so in this case we're going to reuse this one because it looks great. The magnet's all cleaned up, so we can put this back in. We're down to just a dribble, so that's going to be about what we're going to get. So we'll get the drain plug reinstalled. The torque spec for the drain plug is 36 foot-pounds. So we've got our torque wrench set. There we go. And then we can drop this down and move on to the top and the fill procedure. Now I'm going to remove, this is quite the task while holding a camera. Going to remove the fill plug, and we got the crush washer with it. So we're going to drop our funnel down in here. And this funnel works pretty good. We got it right in the hole, comes right up to the top. So there's no trouble at all with this funnel. So like I said, I'll link this in the description. Now we're going to refill with fluid. Now this should take just shy of 4 quarts or 1 gallon. So we're just going to start pouring this in, and I'm going to pour about 3.5 quarts in. And then we're going to go through the check procedure. Now that we've got the fluid in, we're going to follow the manual on the check procedure to set the level. So the first step is to park it on level ground, to start it up, and to run it until it warms up and the radiator fan kicks in. The radiator fan just came on, so I've shut it off, and now between 60 and 90 seconds we need to come over here. Now there's 2 dipsticks. There's the oil dipstick on the engine, and there's the yellow transmission dipstick over here on the transmission. So there again, 60 to 90 seconds, we need to pull this out and check the level. Now one thing I should mention is that Honda does not say you need to shift through the gears. A lot of times that's a standard procedure. Honda doesn't say anything about that. It is hard to capture this on camera, but we're a little low yet. So we've got to add, I don't know, I'm not going to add a lot here. We're just below the bottom mark. So we'll add a little bit and we'll start it up and let it run and then shut it off and check it again. All right, we're back again here. We've added a little bit, we've run it. We've waited 60 seconds. We're going to wipe off the dipstick. Put it back in all the way down. We'll pull it out and we'll see. Okay, we're right at the bottom. We still need to add a little bit more. There's a pretty good shot of that. We're right at the bottom mark. And we just want to be between them. So technically this would be okay, but we're going to add a little bit to get a little bit closer to the top mark. All right, we're right about in the middle of the range, maybe a little bit towards the top. And that was with the full gallon. So I would definitely not recommend dumping the full gallon in right away. But in this case, I put the full gallon in and that got us right in that window. So we are looking good. Now I can pull the funnel out since we don't need to add any more fluid. I've inspected and cleaned the fill plug and the crush washer, and that is good to go. So we're going to reinstall that. Make sure you don't drop the crush washer and lose it somewhere in there. And now we're ready to torque it down, 33 foot-pounds. I've got my long extension and my 17 mil on there. We'll drop it right down on that fill plug. Torque that down. Pull that out. And now we're ready to go. We're going to get the hood closed on this thing, send it down the road, and hopefully it'll be back in about 30,000 miles to do this service again.